We're going to go on and get started. Today, we're going to continue with our topic of last week, which was how to use your subconscious mind. So, we're going to talk more about that. Today, we're going to be really focusing on the how. We talked about the dynamics of the subconscious mind last week, but now we really want to talk about the how. But before we get into the hows of using your subconscious mind, let's go back and do a quick review over how your subconscious mind works. And again, this is going to be a quick review. Good to see you, Violet. So let's go on and get started. So when we're talking about how your subconscious mind works, first and foremost, 95% of what we do subconscious mind wise goes undetected by us. So your subconscious mind is literally running your life. The other thing we need to know about the subconscious mind is that the subconscious mind cannot distinguish between what's real and imagined. And what do we mean by that? Briefly, just to state that when you are imagining an event in your life, let's say that you're imagining the worst case scenario, or you're living out the worst case scenario, the subconscious mind cannot distinguish if that's real or if you're actually experiencing that or if you're doing that in your imagination. The other thing about the subconscious mind, in order to get something deeply embedded in your subconscious mind, the tool that we use most often, whether we realize it or not, is repetition. So as we continue to repeat a thing, then of course that becomes a part of our reality. And again, what we're doing is recapping last week's. And if you want to get more of that, just go to the video for last week, the live video, and it's going to be touching on this topic of your subconscious mind. So let's go on and do this recap real quick. Okay, so the subconscious mind is always listening. We're told by way of master teacher, he says that you will give an account for even every idle word, not just the words that you say passively or the words that you say on purpose, but even those words that you say idly, you're going to give an account for it. And we talk about this often, but when we say the day of judgment, we're not talking about this day that God is judging you. The account is the time that you said, "How you doing, Amanda? Good to see you." So when we're talking about the account, giving an account for that idle word, for example, I always get sick this time of year. My allergies always flare up. So at the time of the harvest of that word, your allergies will flare up. You'll get sick. Oh, nothing ever good ever happens for me. That's fulfillment of that word. So just being mindful that the account is not some day of judgment, but it's your day of judgment or the fulfillment of the word that you said. So let's go on and move forward. And lastly, your subconscious mind is going to respond to your dominant thoughts. Now, why is this important? This is important because many of us, we affirm, let's say, Neville Goddard, or we get some teaching from Joseph Murphy or Reverend Ike or whomever the teacher is, and we start affirming that thing. And then we'll come back, later on and we'll say, well, thank you. We'll come back and say, this stuff isn't working. I've been affirming, I've been affirming, I've been affirming, I've been affirming, and this stuff isn't working for me. What it's affirming is your dominant thoughts, what you feel at your core. There's a scripture that says, as a man, woman thinks in her heart, so is she, so does she, so has she. I added those last portions on, but it's really the same dynamics. Whatever you're thinking at your core level, that's the dominant thought. So in order to reprogram your subconscious mind, that's what we're going to be talking about this week. So we're going to go on and move forward. I just wanted to do a recap of what we talked about last week so that we can step into this week. And those who may not listen to last week's program, they'll at least have some idea of what was communicated. So let's go and get started. And I appreciate those who are on the call here. So the first key when utilizing your subconscious mind, we kind of touched on it when we talked about how the subconscious mind works. The subconscious mind works in pictures. So say that you want more money, better health, loving relationship, or something outside of that. You have to begin seeing yourself being, doing, having, living from. And I make the distinction of living from as opposed to thinking of. Because a lot of times what happens when we're visualizing, we're seeing ourselves in second or third person and we're not experiencing it first person. You have to see yourself walking through that new home, how you feel, the senses and all the things. When you're visualizing, you're seeing all of this stuff in your mind's eye as though it's actually taking place right now. So let me give you a point in case. I talk about this often. When I was looking at getting another car some time back, what happened was absolutely a vision board is very effective. Now, some people are going to tell you affirmations don't work, vision boards don't work, whatever. You have to discover those tools that work for you. Whatever will allow you to get that picture in mind, to get that feeling of living from, then you utilize those tools. Everything is like I talk about the principles of Neville Goddard and the teachings of Neville Goddard. Neville Goddard doesn't work for everybody. But if you're one of those people that you discover that Neville Goddard isn't working for you, then try something new, try something different. It's okay to try something different. And we'll discuss that in a second. Violet was talking about repetition. Repetition is very important. We kind of touched on it briefly, but we'll touch more on that. I'm going to cover this real quick, but I do want to touch on repetition. So when you're seeing that picture, let me say this as Violet had brought up a good point about repetition. All of this stuff, when you're doing it, I'm giving you these step-by-step method. All of this stuff is going to be happening in mere seconds. It's not going to take, when you start imagining, when you start visualizing, when you start living, all this stuff is going to be a flash thought in your mind. It's going to be like a twinkling of an eye. You're going to think about it. You're going to get into the state and you're going to go on about your business, living out your day. And you're going to do that repeatedly throughout the day, just getting yourself in that good feeling state. You want to get into that vibration of being that person. You're going to start conducting personal business, your relationships, your health program from the state of that new person. This is going to tell you that you've clothed yourself in that person. And you're going to do this consistently and persistently, or what we call repetition. See, I like to say that repetition is the mother of retention. When you want to hold on to something, when you want something to stick, you repeat it till it becomes second nature for you. There's 4 stages of learning. And the first stage they call unconscious incompetence. This simply means that you don't know what you don't know. You don't have a clue until something shows up, a teacher or a lesson or something that you see on the television. You say, I never thought about it like that before. All of a sudden, now you're at a place of conscious incompetence. Now you know that you don't know. So you move from unconscious incompetence because you don't know what you don't know. Then you move into conscious incompetence. This is something like when I started to learn how to tell time as a child or tying my shoes. At first, there was no need for me to tie my shoes. My mother would give me these shoes that you just slipped on, or she would tie them. But she got to a place that she got tired of tying my shoes. And so she taught me how to tie my shoes. And I started off at a place, first I didn't know that I didn't know how to tie my shoes. Then I got to a place of conscious incompetence. Then I moved into conscious competence. This is where I knew how to tie my shoe, but I had to think about it. Most of us who drive, we had to get to that place of driving. We were all, first of, we didn't even know if we wanted to drive, but then we got behind the wheel and we realized that we didn't know how to drive. And then we went through the stage of conscious incompetence. And then we started doing it. So then we stepped into conscious competence. We were consciously competent, but we still, we looked around and we were still nervous. Now, for any of us who have driven for a period of time, we get into a state of unconscious competence. Now, what does this mean? This means that you're doing it on autopilot. You don't even think about it. You get in the car and you're so good at it that when you drive, you get from one, and this could be an hour drive, but you get to that destination, you're like, I don't even remember driving because now we're driving on autopilot. And this is how we do everything in our life. You know, our first video, our first podcast, our first job, even when we step into a new job, first we say, I don't know how I'm going to figure all this stuff out. But as you keep showing up and you keep showing up, what happens is you move into a state of conscious competence. Then you start doing that job so well that a person can call you on the phone, ask you a series of questions, and you can say it without even thinking about it. Now you're at a place of unconscious competence. And like I said, we all go through these stages of learning, but that happens through repetition. That's us continuously repeating. And this, besides seeing it in your mind's eye, besides the implementation of it, all of these things pull together to create the new you. So a lot of times, like I said, most of us, we want to stay at the mind level. We just want to think about it. We just want to see it in our mind's eye. Money comes, money comes, money comes, money coming. But we're not practicing money skills. We're not offering what God's given us, as far as our gifts, our abilities, our talents, our skill sets. And we say, well, we're just going to imagine money coming. One of the biggest things that we have to understand about money, for example, is that money, for those who are really having any type of maximum level of success, money acts as that medium of exchange. And normally, as we provide value, people say, I like what it is that you're doing. How can I take time to spend time with you and make an investment in myself? You're welcome. So, as we continuously put ourselves out there, and that's the problem with most of us, even when we're looking at financial prosperity, first and foremost, I talk about this in a short that I'm about ready to release in the next couple of days, but let's go and talk about this real quick. A lot of times I see people saying, I'm worthy, of $1 million. I deserve $1 million. All of those things are true. But if you just stay at worthy and deserving and you seeing it in your mind's eye, most of you are not going to make $1 million or receive $1 million. That's just the facts of it. Now, how do you operate in a state that $1 million can come to you easily and effortlessly? You say, I'm worthy of $1 million, that I'm deserving of $1 million, but then you incorporate, and I'm valuable. Now, why is this important? If we stay at worthy and deserving, then it's almost like we're waiting on somebody to give us. But when we see ourselves as being valuable, now we say, okay, now we have a medium of exchange to exchange with the world. And we have a great example of that when we're looking at the parable of the unwise steward, the parable of the talents. When you're talking about the parable of the talents, we look at this and we say, well, that was just somebody that just mismanaged, their abilities and didn't use the abilities that were given to them. And that's absolutely true. But to be honest with you, that's probably 99% of the population. And it's because most of us don't think that we're valuable. We say that we're worthy. We say that we're deserving. But we say, who's going to listen to me? What do I have to offer? And of course, that's ego speaking. Ego will give us the impression that, let me say this, you have talents, abilities, and skill sets that the majority of the world doesn't have in the way that you have them. It's just true. But because we're so close to them, we think that everybody has the talents and the skill sets and the abilities that we have. So we say, well, nobody's going to compensate me. Nobody's going to pay me to talk about this. Nobody's going to pay me to help them do this because we do it every day. We're so close to it. Because we're so close to it, we don't see our value. So we can look at, a Reverend Ike and we start quoting, I'm worthy, I'm worthy, I'm worthy, I'm deserving. But we don't see ourselves as being valuable. So what happens is money, hey John, money tends to elude us. But when we start seeing our value and what it is that we have to offer, and we begin offering that, then the world is going to, as scripture says, give and it shall be given to you. Pressed down, shaken together, running over, will people pour into your lives. So you start with, I deserve, I'm worthy, but also incorporate and see yourself as valuable. There's only one you. And once you make the transition from this life to the next, there's not going to be another person that's going to be exactly like you. We're like currently like 8 billion snowflakes, and we're all uniquely us. And when we start offering our uniqueness to the world says, how can we benefit you since you've benefited us? So look at what you have independently as you. Don't take it for granted and say that it's not valuable. And the wonderful thing is, even if you believe that you don't have a skill set, you can learn a skill set. But let's go on and move it. So, first, in using your subconscious mind, start seeing yourself as being valuable. Start seeing yourself as deserving. Start seeing yourself as being worthy in your mind's eye first, because what you imagine in your mind's eye is going to be outpictured into your reality. It can't not. As a matter of fact, everything that you're experiencing in your reality at the moment is the byproduct of your thoughts, your feelings, your words, your actions, your attitudes, your dispositions, your states, and so forth. You got to start at your core level and start seeing yourself by way of visualization. And before I move on beyond visualization, let me say this. Don't believe the hype that that's just something that kids do, that's make believe, that's fantasy. This is how your subconscious mind communicates. It communicates in pictures. So when you start becoming as a little child, as it said, all of a sudden, the things that you desire will start to begin to show up in your world. And it's because how many times we thought about a person, for example, and all of a sudden that person reaches out to us, calls us, whatever. That's the power of your imagination. And the wonderful thing is, what we have to understand is that we're all connected. So when you're giving thought to that person, all of a sudden that person's also giving thought to you. So let's move forward. So use the power of affirmation. Now, when I say use the power of affirmation, you can use, I'm abundant, I'm deserving, using the I am statements. But understand, your self talk is, in fact, affirmations, even if those affirmations are negative. Whatever you're saying throughout your day, and it's stated that we think anywhere from 70, 80,000 thoughts a day. As Violet stated, you're God's. What you're giving your attention to, those thoughts. Let me give you a point in case. This is actually relevant. I was thinking about some things that I had to do as we're moving in through this new year and so forth, and things that I wanted to accomplish, things that I wanted to see materialized in my life. And I started seeing my old way of thinking about how I was going to accomplish a particular thing. And I had to put on the brakes. I had to stop myself because I realized that I was limiting God, source, energy, life force, subconscious mind with my old way of believing that it had to be done. And I said, no, I'm not operating from that mindset anymore. And I had to replace that thought with a new desirable thought and a new way of being open to how the thing that I wanted to materialize to show up. Absolutely. Violet was just stating that, it's so amazing, it's so awesome to realize that you're the creator, you're the God in your world, and you're always directing your conversation. It says, blessed, happy is the person that orders their conversation aright. You order your conversation by way of your thoughts, your words, your actions, your feelings, your states, your attitudes, your dispositions in the direction that you want to go. If that thought that you're thinking, like I had to come to the conclusion, wasn't leading me to where it was that I wanted to go, you got to change it. It's like taking a trip. You could take a trip to a destination. Now, say that in taking this trip, you're driving, taking a trip to the, how you doing? Good to see you. I'm doing great. Taking a trip to the destination, say that you realize that there was a detour, but now the detour was taking you off course. You would immediately say, listen, I need to look at my GPS. I need to get on my phone. I need to pull out some maps in order to get back on track. Why wouldn't we do that with our thinking? Why would we why aren't we more purposeful in what it is that we're giving our attention to? Most of us because we don't realize the power of our thinking, the power of our thoughts, the power of our words. So we say this stuff throughout the day. We entertain conversations throughout the day with people that isn't serving us. And we wonder why, okay, in the few moments that I'm using an affirmation, for example, before going to sleep, that first and foremost, I'm going to sleep and having these nightmares, and the stuff that I'm trying to materialize in my life isn't showing up. You got to be more mindful of your conversations, but also the conversations you're having with others. And sometimes you may have to limit certain conversations. I had people that I used to work with, and they practice being on a negative tone. And I said, listen, I can't have that conversation with you. That's not a conversation that I'm willing to have. And yes, maybe some people will get offended, but they will begin to say, listen, I know that I can't talk to him, her about that because that's not a conversation that they're willing to be a part of. And I've had to even deal with the family members when the conversation wasn't leading me to what it was that I wanted to be, do, or have. I said, listen, I can't have those conversations with you. You're going to have that conversation with somebody else because it wasn't nurturing to my spirit. And you have to care enough about yourself to say, to communicate and say, listen, I can't keep having those conversations with you. They're just not leading me to. And will some people think, oddly about you? Absolutely. But that's not your business. Your business is to materialize, to manifest, to create the life that you desire. And that's going to happen as you're mindful of your conversations. So, like when I said about affirmations, I can go into, affirm in the positive, affirm in the first person, make sure that the subconscious mind cannot take a negated sentence. For example, you say, well, I'm not going to eat any more chips. What the subconscious mind hears is, I'm going to eat chips. You have to speak it in the positive and say it the way what you want to show up, not what it is that you don't want to show. Because what you say that you don't want to show, if that's the focus, then that's the prayer. And what's going to happen is you're going to see more of that in your life. If you don't want more of that, whatever that is, to keep showing up in your life, then start speaking about what it is that you do want. So whether it be a loving relationship, better health, more money, whatever, speak in accordance to the thing that you want to show up. It says decree a thing and it shall come to pass. Understand this, we're always decreeing something. The question is what? Now you say, well, how do I know what's showing up in your life? If you look at what's persistently showing up in your life, you can know what has your attention because what has your attention has your life. It's possible at this moment to begin to change it, but you have to be diligent about what you're allowing into your ear gate, to your eye gate, what you're allowing to show up in your life, because whatever that is going to give birth to more of the same. It can't be otherwise. As Violet stated earlier, you're God's. And I don't mean this that you're the supreme deity that created the universe, but you're made up of the same substance. And as I study quantum mechanics, quantum physics, and so forth, you can look at even at the smallest particles when you move past neutrons and protons and so forth, and they break them down to their smallest element called quantum. We find that quantum is very creative and it takes the shape of what it is that we're giving our attention to. Matter of fact, they talk about a wave and a particle. And the wave basically says that When you're not giving it your attention, it doesn't take shape. But the second that we give whatever in our reality our attention, we talk about the mirror, then that's what shows up. So if we start giving abundance our attention, if we start living from a place of abundance, a place from health, a place of love, we're going to start seeing the evidence of more of that. But we can only see the evidence at a quantum level. So, as with a macro level of what it is that we get our attention to, reality is not the cause. Reality is a mirror. So, whatever's consistently, persistently showing up in your life, it's only a reflection of what it is that you've given your predominant attention to. Let's move forward. So, be mindful of what it is that you're affirming. And again, we're affirming morning, noon, and night. Whatever it is that we're thinking about. It says, in the beginning, divine creations, in the beginning of your day, God says. When you say as God's in the beginning of your day, it's what you're giving your attention to. You may not necessarily verbalize it, but what are you thinking about? What do you believe in that's going to show up in your life today? That's your say. And as Mr. Linda will say, your say, whatever that say is a valid say. That's what's going to show up. Okay, so let's move forward. We kind of touched on affirmations, but now we're going into us controlling. We're always modifying reality according to preference. Whatever whatever it is that you're focused on, whether you think it's your preference or not, it is. If what it is that you're focused on isn't what you want to show up in your life, change your preference. But we're always modifying reality according to our preference. The preference is what we're predominantly giving our attention to. Now, if you say, well, that's not what I want to show up in my life, this stuff that keeps showing, that's not, then you need to change your attention. You need to change your, you need to start pouring into yourself more of what it is that you want. Start looking at programs, start listening to teachers, start reading, start, continuously bombard your psyche, your mind with the stuff that you want. What's going to happen over time? That's going to start being your predominant thoughts, words, actions, attitudes, states, dispositions, and so forth. But if right now you say, well, this stuff that I'm experiencing right now isn't my preference, then you have to bombard subconscious mind by visualization, affirmations, emotionalization in continuously. As you do that, that new stuff that most of us know this simply by just listening to talks of Neville Goddard, Joseph Murphy, Wayne Dyer, whoever our teacher was, Bob Proctor. As we continued to listen to them, as we watched their videos, pretty soon we started communicating like them because you haven't given it enough time. The question is, why is it? Listen, years ago as a kid, I had this revelation. I was newly into my spiritual journey. I was a new believer, new Christian, and I was bombarded with all these thoughts. I mean, all these thoughts just kept bombarding. We would call it spiritual warfare. And something done, something just kind of resonated in my spirit. And it said this: just because a thought comes doesn't mean we have to own it. And we have a prime example of that when the master teacher was taken into the wilderness and he was tempted to, you know, to turn the stones to bread, to jump off of a high building, to bow down and worship the powers that be. And he spoke to all of these things. So, what am I saying? What I'm saying is, it's not wrong to have the thought. The problem is when we start dancing with the thought, when we start entertaining the thought, when we start romancing the thought, pretty soon we take on the thought as our ideology. Just because a thought comes up doesn't mean we have to own it. So, matter of fact, understand this: your energy being having a human experience, you're literally inundated right now by thoughts. Now, there are literally trillions, of thoughts around you, more than that, but I'm just going to give it a number that we can identify. There's literally trillions of thoughts around you seeking your attention. Only the thoughts that you give your attention to begin to resonate in your life. Now, because there's so many, we've gotten to a place that we even tune out most of them, but occasionally a thought will come into our mind and we'll say, where in the heck did that come from? I mean, that's so crazy. Where did they come? Now, understand this. Everybody doesn't do that. Some people get these outrageous thoughts, and because they believe, like I did as a kid, because I thought a thought that I had to own the thought, they start living from the thought. It's not wrong that thoughts come. Now, let's go back to the master teacher, for example. Why did he have the need to turn the stones to bread? He was 40 days in the wilderness. He was hungry. But being tempted isn't missing the mark. We can be tempted by something and say, oh, wow, that's interesting, and move on. Why did he have the need to cast himself? Again, 40 days in the wilderness, your mind starts playing tricks on you. Even in why did why was he tempted to say all these kingdoms of the world? Because there was something in him that said, I want to be powerful. You understand? It says in scripture that let no one say that they're tempted. When they're tempted of God. That God tempts nobody, but each one is tempted when they're drawn away by their own desires. If you didn't like spinach, I couldn't tempt you with the thought, say, I just got this big old bowl of spinach and I'm just going to keep this spinach away from you. You're like, you can keep that spinach. You understand what I'm saying? We're tempted by the things that move us, the things that we desire. But just because we're tempted by the thought, we can see the thought, we can acknowledge, okay, wow, that was interesting, and move on. It was like I told you earlier about my story. I said a thought came to me of operating in the old way of thinking that I was accustomed to operating from. And I'm like, no, I'm not going back to that. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm saying this to encourage you. Don't be moved because you think the thought. You're going to think thoughts that are even weird and outrageous, but you look at it like, oh, that's interesting. But you say, okay, but that's not because you have a plan of who it is that you want to be, do, or have. You say that thought is not taking me in the direction of who it is that I want to be, do, or have, and you disregard it. And I talked about it last week, but I'll say it again briefly. It says, resist error, that error thought, and it will leave, it will flee. Draw near to the good, the thought of what it is that you want to manifest in your life, and that good will draw near to you. So I only say this, and I went through this because I want you to understand just because a thought comes up, you don't have to own it. It says, blessed is the person who does not condemn themselves for that which they've allowed. Just because the thoughts come up, you don't have to curse yourself like, why do I keep thinking? It just means that there's more work to be done in focusing on what it is that you do want. But even when you become proficient in living the life that you do want, those other thoughts still will show up. They just won't have a loud voice. They won't have your attention. And we'll talk about this really next week. I said I have something special I want to talk to you about and something that was given to me. But just rest assured, just because a thought comes, you don't have to own it. You can acknowledge it, change the thought, and go on about your business. Okay, so we got to be mindful of our self talk. We're talking to ourselves even when we're sleeping, morning, noon, and night. We're saying something. Be purposeful in what you're giving your attention to most often. Are there going to be times that you get upset? And so, absolutely. Just don't stay there. Get back on track and listen to yourself and say, well, we need to become more aware of what it is that we're saying when we're talking to ourselves. As we become more aware, we're going to begin to direct our conversations more readily towards what it is that we want to manifest in our lives. It's going to come easy. But most of us just want this stuff to come by osmosis. It's going to require effort on your part. One of the greatest, most disciplined people that I know of was Neville Goddard. I don't know if that was because of his acting abilities and being able to remember lines and so forth, but Neville was a very disciplined person with his thoughts. And many of us will hear him talk about a technique and we think to ourselves, then I should just be able to get into the state and manifest it. You got to understand, Neville was practicing this stuff well over 30, 40 years. Most of us haven't taken the time to discipline our minds and to start to control our self talk. And then we say, this stuff doesn't work. It's working perfectly. It's just that the stuff that you don't want has most of your attention. So, of course, that's what keeps showing up in your life. And listen, even when you get your thoughts on track and you're doing everything right, occasionally some of that other stuff will show up, but you won't be moved by it because you'll realize, okay, this is just something I'm passing through. I'm not here to stay. The problem is, most of us, because we haven't taken the time to discipline our own self talk, to listen to what it is that we're saying to ourselves and inquiring with ourselves, is this leading me to where I want to go? And if so, we keep doing it. And if not, we change it. You're an energy system. You're a powerful spiritual being. But the challenge is we've allowed the flesh to run the show. We've allowed ego to run the show. And we've done this for most of our life. You got to take your power back by thinking about what it is that you want to create in your day and then start living from the things that you decided that you want to create. And let me touch on this real quick because most of us, we say, okay, well, now we've not made, let's say, $10,000, but all of a sudden tomorrow we want to be millionaires. You're not at the vibrational state to bring that kind of money into your life immediately. And even if by some chance, lottery win or inheritance or whatever, because you're not at that vibrational state, you're not going to keep that money because you haven't learned the tools to manifest the money. We look at our trials and so-called failures as final. Failures isn't final. Failures is feedback. You learn how to do something or not how to do something. That's feedback. So then you tweak it and all of a sudden you're successful. That thing that you called failure, now other people are experiencing that same failure, but you have the key to the feedback now. So you start offering the key. Say, listen, I've discovered how to lose 30 pounds in 30 days. I'm just giving an example. You take my course. Now, the things that you don't do, because I've done this, the things that you don't do is blank, 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 blank. Those were your perceived failures, but now they're your financial stepping stones. The things that you've gone through is what you're going to help other people basically elevate through. You're going to teach them to be their better self. You're going to shortcut their learning curve. So what could have taken 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you're helping them do it in a few months. They're going to be so grateful. They're going to say, how can I compensate you for that? And don't take compensation as some bad, evil thing. That's old programming. Those who are in power have programmed us. We don't even realize that we're programmed. I start talking about money, people start turning off. If you start turning off when you hear the subject of money, understand you've been programmed. My goal, I don't benefit from you not being programmed. I just want, if money turns you off, understand, because it's like me talking about a hammer. You're like, I don't like when he talks about hammers, and you turn off. Now, most of us would say that that was crazy. He turned off, she turned off because he started talking about a hammer. Nobody would turn off because well, most people wouldn't turn off because I talk about a hammer. Money is likewise a tool. It's nothing more than a tool. It's a tool that we say, listen, my life energy, I can't take this house with me, but we can use this term, this tool called money, and we use it as an agreement. And we say, we'll use the exchange for what I've invested my life energy for what is that you've invested your life energy. And we call the medium of exchange money. Money is nothing more than a tool. But we've been so programmed as a society that if somebody starts talking about money, we immediately start turning off. Understand that's your programming because there's really nothing good or bad about money. Money's just money. Like I said, it's just a medium of exchange. It's another form of energy. Now, how that tool, a person can take a hammer and knock somebody in the head and kill them. That hammer wasn't evil, but they used the evil for something evil, something that caused error. Likewise with money. Money's neutral. So somebody can use money to bless the world, and somebody else can use their same currency called money to harm the world. I just want you to not turn off because of your program. I want you to be a conduit for God's blessing through you. It says, give, and it shall be given to you. Pressed down, shaken together, running over, will people pour into your lives. They do that in the way of, it used to be that the currency we call money used to be grain, rice. Sometimes it was rocks, minerals, salt. Salt was the currency for a long time. But nobody said, "Well, I'm gonna start talking about salt," and they turn off. No, no, what? But we've been programmed purposely to come from the mindset that money is evil and that we'll get ours in the hereafter. Money is not for the hereafter. The currency of money is for now. It's for you to use in the vehicle in the society of now, whatever form that money takes. And you can't make a big difference if you yourself are broke, busted, and disgusted and in need of money. But as you begin to use your gifts to bless others and they begin to compensate you, now you can be a bigger blessing in the world. So I don't want to stay on that topic. I just want you to understand money is not evil. We've just been programmed to believe that it's evil. And that's why when we hear the topic of money, we turn off. That's your programming. But money in itself is no more evil than a hammer, as I gave the analogy. So let's move forward. So control your self talk. And when that conversation, ask yourself, where did that come from? Where did my belief about money come from? Often we'll find that it came from our family, our society, from religious circles, and then question it. And then some of you are going to go to scripture. Every scripture that you can say that money is evil, I can give you 2 or 3 scriptures that says that it's not. I'm just telling you how it is. God said at the beginning that he saw the gold and the diamonds and the precious stones. God said it was good. Jesus said make friends with money. I just don't want you to stay there. Don't. Why was this created? Why was this whole dynamics? The dynamics was created for you to think that money was evil so that you had no problem giving it away. The powers that be wanted you to think that it was evil so that you would give it to them. That's the truth of the matter. And they've done a great job for the last 2,000 years to make sure that we thought and think that money is very evil. That's your programming. But I'm moving on beyond your programming. So control your self talk. Next, start acting as if. We talk about make believe, we start pretending. You start living from. You say that I'm worthy of health, loving relationship, more money, whatever. Start acting as if. Start being the person. Now, we've been so taught that this is make believe, that this stuff can't work because it's make believe and it's fantasizing. This is how your subconscious mind works. Maybe when I was saying this is how subconscious made me think of a song for those who, this is how we do it. Anyway, that's what came to my mind. I don't know why. But for those who don't know the song, don't worry about it. It was a group by the name of Guy and Teddy Riley and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, I'm digressing. Act as if. Now you say, well, coach, what's the benefit of me Understand this. You're acting as if right now. You're acting as if you're less than God. You're acting as if you can't do this. You're acting as if, who am I to do such a thing? You're acting as if you're a spiritual being having a human experience. You're God incarnate in this body called you. In my case, DiCarlo. And I keep acting as though I'm less than the God, the creator of my world, by way of my thoughts, my words, my actions, my feelings, my states, my attitudes, my dispositions. I keep acting as if the world without, who's ever in office, is in control of my life. My point being is, you're acting as if right now, but right now you're acting as if you're much less than you truly are. I was watching a TikTok video of a young lady that I went through one of her courses. And when I went through her course, at that time, it was like 4 months into her journey, 4 to 6 months into her journey, she had made. Now, let me start with the beginning of the story. The young lady had moved from one part of the country to another part of the country, and some things happened. Bottom line, it put her in a place of homelessness. So she was living out of her car. She started practicing the principles that I'm talking to you about, but she also started practicing some um, spiritual principles, biblical principles with finances and mindset and so forth. Long story short, within 4 months, December of the year before, she was living in her car. By April, May, she had made $300,000. Now, this didn't just happen by her saying, I'm going to be a multimillionaire, I'm going to be a multimillionaire, I'm going to be a multimillionaire, and getting into the silence and putting her fingers together. And she took action. She started talking. She went on a platform called TikTok. And she started speaking because she was dealing with some really deep esteem issues. Can you imagine having a place to stay to going and being in a place of homelessness? It's going to deal with your psyche. It's going to mess with you. And so she started talking from her car initially to women about self-esteem, talked about her own issues and what worked for her. She started sharing. In 4 months' time, because she kept showing up, that became her job. She kept showing up, kept putting the camera on it, kept showing up, offered an ebook, kept showing up. She created a business in about 4 months' time worth $300,000 at that point. Watched one of her videos uh, yesterday. She was talking again. And I know that this stuff is true. I mean, she shows the validation and so, and other people are doing it. Let me say this real quick. I like to digress, but this is important. I was talking to a coaching client recently, and she says, you know, this Neville Goddard stuff, I think that they're withholding something from me. They're withholding, they're not telling you the whole story. They're not giving you the whole truth, because if I had the whole truth, then it would be working for me. I said there's people that are using the Neville Goddard principles with the books that are out there right now, and they're having massive success. I said the only difference is belief. I said they believe that it's going to work for them. You don't. You're second guessing yourself and all. What am I saying to you, creators? Be it unto you according to your belief. That young lady showed up and showed out. It wasn't because her videos were perfect. It was that she kept showing up. Then she started making offers. She had a little ebook and she offered them the ebook and so forth. She kept showing up. You guys all say that YouTube's not working, Instagram's not working, TikTok's not working, Facebook's not working. It's because you're sporadic. You're sporadic in your message and you're sporadic in showing up. You create one or two videos and say, I'm tired of this stuff. Money didn't come yesterday, so I'm not going to do it anymore. People deal with people that they know, like, and trust. As you keep showing up, they're going to say, I know that on Sunday, Coach is going to be here and he's going to be talking about something that's going to change my life. Something's going to give me something I never thought about before. Likewise with you. As you keep showing up, at first it's going to be, I started off with one person. Today I'm almost moving towards 14,000 people on YouTube, 13,000 people on Facebook. You keep showing up. Good question. The question was, what's the best way to act as if? First and foremost, decide who it is that you want to be. You find other people, other creators, whatever it is that you want to be, people doing what it is that you want to be. And at first, even if it's Neville Goddard, you say, I want to be like the next Neville Goddard, whatever. At first, you start speaking in Neville's voice. You start showing up as Neville. Don't worry about, well, people will know I'm a fraud. It's not about that. It's about you rewiring your mind. As you keep showing up, what's going to happen is you're going to discover your own voice. Neville was an avid student, always pouring into himself, but he implemented, he practiced the stuff that he learned. Many of us keep pouring into knowledge and building knowledge upon knowledge, but we're not implementing. We haven't even done our first video, even though Spirit said we need to do a video. We have 1,000 reasons why we can't turn on our smartphone, hit record, and upload it to YouTube. All that stuff is online to teach you how to do just that. We keep saying, I want to be taken to the stratosphere. It's as we do the first thing first. See, you can't graduate onto college until you got the basics of the foundations of first grade. You don't get the basics or the foundation without implementation. Most of us just want to all of a sudden get 1,000 followers, 10,000 followers, 100,000 followers, and we haven't even done our first 100 videos. The reason why it's important to do your first 30 bad videos, as Mr. Beast would say, he says, listen, your first 100 videos are going to be bad. And he's absolutely correct. No matter how great your first video will be, you're going to look back 10 years from now, 5 years from now, a year from now, and say, man, I got a lot better than I was way back then. But that only happens. So the question is, how do I act as if? You start. Get somebody in mind. If it's just not a better version of you, and you say, okay, it's nice to have acting a new me. Yes, yes. So let me go on. This is very important. It's going to seem like fraud, imposter syndrome. It's going to be uncomfortable. But we have a name for that. It's called growth. But as you do it, that young lady that started doing those videos, I assure you, when she first started doing those first videos and pouring herself out there and talking about her own esteem issues, it was very uncomfortable. But now she gets on there and talks about it like it ain't nobody's business. She offers workshops and everything else. People are flooding into how can we get to know you? How can we get your service? Blah, blah, blah. This is how she went from 0 to 1 million in a year. The question is, how can I act as if? You start. It's going to be uncomfortable. If you look back, I've probably got well over 1,000 videos out there. So it's hard to go. You can actually go on YouTube. You can say earliest videos and so forth. But anyway, if you go out and look at some of my earlier videos, what you'll find is me doing voiceovers in the background. I was uncomfortable with putting my face on camera. I was uncomfortable. And the funny thing was, as I was just doing the information and the voice in the background, I was at like 400 followers or whatever. But the second I started showing up and people started to know, like, and trust me, and I kept showing up, the following went from 400 to 1,000 to 2,000. I was uncomfortable. Often I put content out that makes me uncomfortable, but I put it out because if it makes me uncomfortable, it's something that you need to hear. And I know that in putting it out, I'm going to get naysayers, I'm going to get people, I'm going to get pushback. I know I speak to a lot of things that traditional Christianity don't want me to address. But you get into, as Violet says, into the frequency of it, but you get into the frequency by doing it over and over and over and over. One day you're not going to be uncomfortable with doing it. But you got to understand, ego is not bad. I use ego and I mention ego, but ego is not bad. Ego was a tool that in prehistoric days, it was there to protect us. And so it was like spidey sense. And the spidey sense was, okay, well, you don't want to do that because there's a lion out there. So you don't want to go out there because there's a lion out there and that lion's going to eat you. Now we don't have lions, but ego is still trying to keep us in that place of comfort. Even in poverty, discomfort, it's something that we know. So it's easier to continuously stay in what it is that we do know and uncomfortable than to take a chance of something that can transform our lives, turn our whole life around. We call it the unknown. But ego says that's not safe. And it's not till we get onto the other side of the decision that we realize it was the best decision that we ever made. Your ego's job is trying to protect you. It doesn't mean you harm, but the ego will keep you stuck in fear, in discomfort, all because it's familiar. Even in a bad relationship, people say, I want my SP back. It was the worst relationship they had ever been in, but it's all they know. So they say, well, I want to be, because the fear of being with somebody totally different, somebody totally new, is so overwhelming that the best that they can see for themselves is that SP, even though they know that that SP was harmful, put them down, didn't have anything good for them, but it's all they know. And it's likewise with us. Many of us won't take that next step because the next step is the unknown and it seems so fearful. But as you start taking steps into the unknown consistently and persistently, pretty soon ego won't have that on you. Matter of fact, ego will know if that comes up and you say, well, I'm acting on it, it won't start presenting those things to you. But what you're going to look back on is a life that one day, let me say this, building a new paradigm. One day, you're going to look back on your life and you're going to have either a life of regret or a life of rejoicing. Now, the life of rejoicing, we think it's the money, we think it's the cars, we think it's the houses, the people, whatever. What it is, in truth, it's the experience. And one day you're going to look back on the experiences in your life. And either you can look at them and say, man, I've done this, I tried this, and I had a full life. Now, I look at the life of George Foreman. George Foreman had a full life, had a full life. There's a whole bunch of people that George Foreman grew up with. They're at the exact same place that they were when George was a kid. And I know that because I see that in my own life. I don't want to look back when my time, if it's tomorrow, and say, I wish I had reached out to people. I wish I had done a YouTube channel. I wish I had impacted more lives. Absolutely. You only regret the things that you don't do, as Amanda says, and understand. Violet says stuff. I wanted to repeat that, but if she can send that again, I'll see if I can communicate on that. It's only the stuff that you don't do. You don't want to, and they've done studies on this. It's all in the mind. Absolutely. Now we can say that it's all in the mind. We can just verbalize that, but that mind is a powerful thing, and if we don't understand how to use it, we won't reap the benefits. And this is the goal of how to use. So acting as if, the question was, how do I act as if? You start, and then you repeat, and then you rinse, and you repeat, then you rinse, and you repeat. One day, it's not going to be an act anymore. It's going to be who you are. Everything's mental, absolutely. So then the last thing, once you decide something in your subconscious mind, once you make a decision, we talk about the bridge of incident. Your job is to see the end. Let go of the how, because you're not going to know. Let's say, because it's an easy measurement, let's say it's money. You say, I want to manifest $1 million in 1 year. You set the intention, then you go about from what you know. Okay, well, I know how to do this. You start doing what it is that you do know. Don't say, well, I'm not going to do anything, because the only thing you're going to get from not doing anything is what you've gotten from not doing anything all the way up until this moment. But you start doing the first thing that you know. Okay, well, I know how to make gift cards. Let me start making gift. Now, that may not be the ultimate business, but somebody said it this way, and I like it. God hits a moving target. When you start taking action, more opportunities will present themselves to you. And even that action that you took at first may not be the thing that you end up doing. What it's doing is building momentum. So your job is to do what you know to do at the moment. See the picture, whatever it is that is in your spirit to do. If it's $1 million, if it's starting a new business, if it's better health, you see in your mind's eye because that's what's going to be outpictured. But as you see it in your mind's eye, there's going to be some things that are required of you. The question was, how do I act? You start acting as if I'm the person that eats better, that exercises daily, or 3 times, whatever your regimen is. You start acting as if, and that's the problem. Let me end on this, acting as if, and letting go of detachment. We keep making this stuff mystical, magical. Simply decide what you want to do. Find out what the person is. For example, there's some things that I'm going to be doing a lot more lives in the coming months, years, so forth, and I'm going to be doing on various platforms. The goal is because I'm going to be evangelizing, if you want to call it that, my book, Quantumetics. I want to teach people how it works, how mind works, and so forth. So it's needful for me to put it out there. So I have to be the voice for Quantumetics. So you're always visualizing. The question was, is it necessary to visualize when manifesting? You're always seeing in your mind, whether you see it as that visualizing. Again, like I said, we've made it too mystical. I went to the store today. There were a couple items that I needed: milk, eggs. Anywhere, if you're anywhere in the country, you know the thing with eggs. I had to get some eggs and some other things. In my mind's eye, besides writing it down, taking a picture of my smartphone and having it on my smartphone, I saw the things that I needed in my mind's eye. That was visualization. You think about, okay, I got to get my taxes done. You start seeing, okay, who am I going to go to get my taxes done? Am I going to do it myself? That's visualization. I'm trying to make this stuff simple that you realize that you're doing this anyway. Just because we use terms, we're affirming all the time. We're visualizing all the time. We're doing this stuff. Now, we've given them these fancy tools or these fancy words. And so, but this is how you're designed. You can't not visualize. You can't not affirm. Your energy system, you can't not feel. What I'm saying is directing your visualization, communication, feelings towards what it is. Give it more of your attention of what it is that you do want to show up in your life. But you can't not. People say, well, I can't see, I can't. You're doing it all the time. That's how your mind works. Whether you call it that, whether you realize that's what you're doing, don't worry about that you're not seeing this vivid picture. Your mind works differently from other people, but you still see it in your mind. I can tell you right now, don't see a pink elephant. Now, many of you say, well, I didn't see a pink elephant. No, you saw a pink elephant because you had to see a pink elephant to decide not to see a pink elephant. My point is, you're visualizing, you're affirming, you're feeling. You're doing this all the time. Ask, seek, and knock. Ask, affirm, seek, visualize, knock, feel. You're doing this stuff all the time. What I'm saying to you, because you are doing this all the time, do it more purposefully. Hey guys, I done went over. I love you. I could talk all day. We'll talk. And again, I got some stuff really talking about getting in states and so forth. The stuff that I'm going to talk about next week is going to be powerful. And I don't say that to blow any whistle. It was given to me, and I was like, mind blown. Love you. Talk to you next week.